What is up, everybody? We got a banger of a show tonight because I'm with my guy Suneil. The question is after the injury, do the expectations change? We're going to talk about that and more next. Next. All right, welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Tuesday, which means my guy Suneil is right here with me. Suneil, I always love Tuesday shows because it's with you, my brother. How you doing, man?
Man, I gotta say, all the shows I do, I always have to be on my P's and Q's when you turn that intro video on, because you never know when it's gonna end. So it's like sometimes you could just be on your phone, you could take a sip of water, all this kind of stuff. Not on Jesse's show, not on Last Second Sports. It could start down to the last second on Jesse's show, right?
Dude, I don't know what the deal is. It's happened twice, and it only happens with you. But for some reason, my fat finger likes to re-hit the button again. It's wild. Let's say what's up to the chat before we jump in to some of this stuff. We've got Terradome coming in. What's up, my peeps? What's up, Terradome? I love you, man. Throwback, 49ers throwback. Always showing love. Mike, what's up? Jesse, what's up? Good name, by the way. Derek, Don, everybody, I appreciate y'all for tapping in over here at Last Second Sports. All right.
And Jesse, before you start,
yeah,
I gotta give you your flowers, my man.
Okay,
I saw there was an article, I think, what NBC Sports, San Francisco quoted you because you did an amazing interview with O'Sullivan, JT. You got your flowers. Last Second Sports was featured in the article. Just want to say congratulations, my man. You obviously, I think you do this game different than everybody else, man. That's why I really appreciate you bringing me into your little circle, and I love doing this show. And I just think that, yeah, man, I appreciate you, and I'm really glad that you got some shine there, man. So congratulations.
Thank you, bro. Rick says, can we get positive? Rick, of course we can get positive. In fact, we're going to start off positive. How about this trailer? No, I'm just joking. No, actually, we are going to get positive. The very first topic we have is talking about some players that deserve some kudos, right? And I know there's some negative things going around. This is, for me, the last show where I'll talk a little bit about it, but we're not going to harp on it too much, I promise. We are going to stay mostly positive. We're turning the page on some of the things that the 49ers can do to continue to win, but we do want to start off a little bit differently, and we want to talk about some players that deserve kudos because there are a lot of really good things happening in San Francisco. There's a really, really good team, and right now, according to some rankings out there, the 49ers are not only the best team, but far and away the best team against the opposing team's number one wide receivers 2 weeks in. So a lot of great things to talk about as far as that goes. So, Suneil, we'll go back and forth until we run out of these kudos to give.
But okay, so we don't just have to pick one.
You don't have to pick one. No. Right. But only give me one at a time because I don't have to pick all of mine, right? So we can go back and forth until we run out of the kudos that we want to give. Right. But go ahead. Yes, give a player kudos.
I love it. I'm going to take the easiest one. The 49ers front office did it again. Yeah. They went out there and they found them someone that I think will be all-pro, Pro Bowler again in the 5th round. We thought we were really going to be hurting in the secondary and the safety position, and all of a sudden we got somebody with wild hair that's playing like a dude with wild hair, and that is Mr. Talanoa Hufanga, looking like a superstar back there, man. I can't say enough for this dude's growth from year 1 to year 2. He's flying all over the field. They basically gave him the green light to go play instinctually, and everything we've been hearing from Jimmy Ward, from the guy, from D'Amico Ryans, from the guys in the locker room about this kid's innate ability to just feel, the game. it's there. You know, there were so many negatives about this guy coming out of college about, you know, he couldn't do this, he couldn't do that. You know, he's injury prone and all this type of stuff. But the 49ers have let him loose, and this guy is flying all over the field, creating havoc. I think he has 17 tackles, interception, multiple pass deflections, causing interceptions. Like, I can't wait for him and Jimmy Ward to be partnered up there, man. I think them two are gonna be even better than Ward and Tart when they were healthy. Like, it's insane what Hufanga is doing. So I think that's the easiest one to give flowers to, but definitely somebody who's very deserving.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think that's the easiest one. I think you're a cheater for that. But no, you're right. I mean, Hufanga is playing it's only 2 weeks, right? But he's playing at an all-pro level. Like, he's not just playing really good. He's playing elite of the elite. And, you know, people want to harp on the one play against the Bears with Pettis, and some people say that was his fault. It possibly could have been, right? If it's a straight cover 3, it could be. If it was supposed to be a match concept, sure. But also, it almost looked like he was in a QB spy there. That's just my opinion. But let's say that play was his fault. Outside of that, I mean, he's done way more than enough to make up for it. And you're right. I mean, the kid's just a ball hawk. He's constantly around the ball, whether he's laying the lumber on somebody, whether he's tipping the ball or picking the ball himself. Hufanga definitely deserves his kudos. And I'm actually going to give kudos to his running mate. So right now, with Jimmy Ward out, we thought it could be scary hours for the 49ers. And I think Gibson has done such a good job as well. I mean, he almost had the pick on Justin Fields. If it's not raining, he probably does pick that, hit him right in the chest. But he made a great play as well, coming back to the ball. And then last week, he was there in cleanup duty when Hufanga did tip the ball. I think Gibson's playing really well. And the other thing outside of those plays is you're not really hearing about Gibson, which is always a good thing for a secondary player. If you don't hear about them, they're playing good. If you hear about them and you hear the good things, then they're probably playing elite. And we just talked about Hufanga. You're hearing good things about him, and then the rest of the game, you're not really hearing about him, which means he's playing at an elite level. I could arguably say that Gibson is doing the same thing right now because you're not hearing about him a lot, but when you are hearing about him, it's always good things. So him keeping us afloat with Ward being out, this is a guy that was picked up off the streets really, really late in the offseason because Ward got hurt. I think he was cut and then brought back to the practice squad. And then he snuck his way onto the main roster and started in week 1. I think was a little bit of a surprise. I think that other people thought it would be either Moore or Odom, but he's done a phenomenal job. He really has. And so I have to give kudos to the running mate of Talanoa Hufanga as well. Is there anybody else you want to give kudos to?
I do. And I know you called me a cheater, and I thought that was blasphemous and a low blow. But now I'm really going to be a cheater because I am going to pick 2 people. And the reason why I'm going to pick 2 people is because and the reason why I'm picking 2 people is because the stat line I'm going to put out involves both of them. One of the things, and I would like an apology from you, Jesse, after I state this as well.
All right.
One of the things that was I used to get killed for week after week after week was trying to calm down this whole narrative that the offensive line is going to be terrible. People like my very close friend, Jesse Naylor, looked at me with the "are you crazy" eyes that this offensive line could hold up. And look, I'll give Jesse some bail. Look, the defenses that the 49ers have gone up against in the first 2 weeks aren't necessarily the most scariest defenses in the NFL. And they are going to be going up against a lot more. But the 2 guys I want to mention are 2 guys that Jesse was like, this is the reason why this offensive line is a huge question mark. And that's Aaron Banks and Spencer Burford. And let me give you the stat line between these 2 guards in the first 2 games. And I want to credit Coach Yak on Twitter because he's the one who put this out here. Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks, what they have done so far in pass protection this season, 120 blocking snaps. This is between the 2 of them. 0 sacks allowed, 0 QB hits, 3 pressures. Not too bad for 2 guys that are getting their first playing time in the NFL, Jesse. And even though, like I said, they're not going up against all-pro level defensive linemen and things like that. They're still going up against NFL caliber linemen on teams, and they're still playing lights out when you're talking about 0 sacks allowed, 0 QB hits, especially for the 2 guard positions where you lost 2 veterans and one was an all-pro in Laken Tomlinson. I got to give nothing but respect to these guys. And like I said, whatever you want to do to give me that apology, Jesse, I do take money, Cash App, signed jerseys, whatever you want to do. I will gladly accept that from you, my friend.
No problem. Yep. I'll send it right over, man. Stat. Let me get to these super chats real quick before we give somebody else flowers. Cravatron says, one love, hit the like button, everyone. I appreciate that, Cravatron. And then Flav says, Jess, wanted to show you some love. I appreciate you having me back. Having my back in there because one thing that drives me nuts is people thinking I want to trade Andrew. Yeah, man, listen, we've obviously had our back and forths on the whole Trey Jimmy thing and who should start and whatever. But you were live. You were with us live when we were watching that game, and you immediately was like all about the injury and how bad you felt for him. So, I mean, it's only fair that I give you that. I mean, that's how you acted, and so I got to give that to you. And I think most people, even if you wanted Jimmy to play, I don't think anybody wanted. I'm not going to say anybody. Most people didn't want injury on Trey. There are a few scumbags for sure. But for the most part, I don't think most people did, and you certainly were not one. But let me show you and Cravatron some love, and here's how we do it. Dan, shout out to you for becoming a new member. I appreciate you. Absolutely. And see, look at Flav, I told you, man, you play this right, Flav. You went from being the heel of chats, that the way that you were acting after the injury happened and showing the love for Trey that you did, people might start liking you. They might warm up to you, Flav. So we'll see how it plays out. We'll see how it plays out. All right, another player that I want to give kudos.
Man, first of all, acknowledge mine.
What?
Say Spencer.
Oh yeah. No, you're right. I tried to. You're right. I tried to.
Yeah, I see
right through that.
Don't worry. I know you're.
I definitely tried to skirt that one. Oh, look, another super chat. No, I'm joking. Let me replay those same super chats again real quick. No, listen, you're right, and I want to say this. My thing was, because you had me come around, and I think earlier on you kind of had me come around on the fact that they wouldn't necessarily be horrible. Like, your whole point was, we don't know what they're going to be, but to just assume they're going to be trash we can't assume that, right? And they certainly are not that. They're actually playing at more than a serviceable level at this point, which would make you right. I think you talked about, what was it, the 11 or 2012 offensive line, and how there was a lot of unknowns and it played really well. And so I want to give you credit for that for sure. But, and we'll see. The good news is that these are players that are also developing. And I talked about Trey Lance a lot and how he needed this year to develop and all those things. But we also talked about the 3 up front and how they deserve the same grace because they're learning on the fly as well. Like, we can't expect perfection. We can't expect that day one that we're going to have a second-year guard come in and be a Pro Bowler like Laken Tomlinson. Like, it's just not it. We can't expect that. But he's playing really well right now. And if he does keep it up, maybe it is possible. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out. But right now, if they continue doing what they're doing, it's good enough, right? Because the rest of this team is elite. I think the rest of this team can certainly win around a deficiency or two. No team is perfect. And right now, they're doing what they need to do. So I absolutely love it, man. I hope that continues. And I'm rooting for all 3 of those kids up front, man, because if they can continue to play well, sky's the limit for this team. And I expect, even though the competition's going to rise and they may take a lump here or there, I also think that they're going to improve because they're getting those snaps as well. So kudos to you for that one.
Thank you.
I want to, and I wish I can give credit. I don't know where it's at in the chat now. I kind of lost it. But somebody said Womack. And I agree, because again, we're not hearing like amazing things from Womack, but we're not hearing about Womack. And that's a good thing in the secondary, right? And we're talking about a rookie who was drafted as late as he was. remember, K'Wan Williams was a pretty damn good nickel corner, right? And so the fact that you have a rookie come in who wasn't expected to do these things, was drafted super late. Although I will say, I'm going to give myself kudos real quick. I tweeted the moment he was drafted that was our future nickel corner. So I'll just pat myself on the back. But no, in all seriousness, Womack is playing really, really well. I think better than most people, even myself, who said that he would be the nickel corner right away, even better than what I expected. His measurables are playing out, and certainly he hasn't gone against a Cooper Kupp, right? That's fair, but he's done a really good job, man. He has done a good job, and in this secondary right now, I mean, when they get Jimmy Ward back, it's right. Can you imagine how good this secondary can be? And let's just pray for good health at this point.
There's this guy that everybody just has forgotten about by the name of Jason Verrett that is also scheduled to come back. So it's like you're talking about two super elite guys that this secondary is looking like one of the best secondaries the 49ers have ever had under Kyle Shanahan already. And the two pieces that are supposedly coming back sometime this season could be better than all of the talent that is on the field right now, which is insane to think about, right? Because arguably Jason Verrett, when healthy, could be the best cornerback that the 49ers have. And arguably Jimmy Ward, I mean, I don't think it's that arguable. Jimmy Ward is the best safety that we have. I mean, Hufunga's playing out of his mind, but we've seen Jimmy Ward play like that for a long time. So to have that level of talent be on the just resting is pretty crazy.
Absolutely. Lions Mania. Hey, congrats to your Lions, by the way. You guys are 101. You looked really, really good. And I know that you support Dose and Rad, so I'm not going to go in on you too much. You can have your belief. I appreciate the viewership. Tommy says, shots fired on the Rob Shoe Show. Well, I'm sure that it's probably coming from the chat. I doubt it's coming from Rob. I think Rob and I have a pretty decent relationship. I don't think it's about you.
From what I read, I think it has something to do with Grant.
Oh, all right, whatever. I don't really care, honestly. Yeah. Like if it is about me, I doubt it's from Rob. Rob's always been fine with me, so nothing but the best for Rob. Flav says, also saw Kittle on WWE last night. Said he's 100% playing this week. Yeah, he was close last week. He was close. So I would be shocked if he didn't play this week. He also FaceTimed Trey ringside, and it was joking with him, cheering him up. Anyone who says he doesn't like Trey is dead wrong. I don't think he doesn't like Trey. I think if he had his choice, he would choose Jimmy, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, those guys are really good friends, but he certainly isn't like wishing injury on Trey. Like right. I think none of that is going on, Flav. Can't say whether who he prefers at quarterback. I'm telling you, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. Here's the thing, and this is what I noticed after the game last year, and that's fine. Like they've been through a lot during their careers, right? Like he also, they're just really good friends after the Jacksonville game. So I realized how good of friends that Kittle and Jimmy were after the Jacksonville Jaguars game, because I went to that game. And afterwards, as we're walking kind of through the stadium, all the players start coming out. Their family's there. They're signing autographs, whatever. So we stop for a few minutes, kind of watch everybody. And Jimmy comes out. His family comes and greets him. And then Kittle comes running out of the tunnel, hugs his brother, hugs his mom and all that stuff. You could tell it was more than just a teammate relationship, right? They're genuine good friends. And there's nothing wrong with that, man. There's a lot of guys who have been here for a long time with Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's okay that they prefer him. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's also why you kind of ran that risk if you were going to develop Trey, that maybe you shouldn't bring Jimmy back, right? Now, obviously, hindsight's 2020. Jimmy's here. We're happy for that because we don't want Purdy playing, right? Right. Purdy's cool, and I think Purdy's going to be a very good backup for a long time, but not now. We definitely want Jimmy to be playing over Purdy. But at the same time, I think having him here could have caused friction in the locker room if this thing had played out. But it didn't, and here we are. So that's kind of my thought on the whole Kittle thing. All right, so I just gave you Womack. So just to recap real quick where we're at. If you want to give more, that's fine. But we're trying to start off the show on a positive note. We're giving kudos to people. You gave one to Hafunga, cheater. I gave one to Gibson. That was a great pick by me. You then gave it to 2 offensive linemen, which is double cheating. And then I gave it to Womack. Is there anybody else before we move on that you want to give kudos to?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go. We don't have to dwell on them, but obviously Nick Bosa gets some kudos. I think Dre Greenlaw had a hell of a game against the Seahawks. He played within himself. And then, I mean, and then I got to give it up to the cornerback duo of Mosley and Ward. I think you mentioned that, they're the best against wide receiver ones. They've been playing lights out as well. So,
yeah, they definitely have. Sentinel question: can this team, as it exists right now, beat the Bills or the Chiefs in a Super Bowl? Chiefs, I do think so. I do. The Bills, to me, I picked in March to win the Super Bowl. I don't. I mean, and this is not if Trey was playing, I'd pick them. There's a reason I didn't pick the 49ers to win the Super Bowl. I thought there was a great chance they could make the Super Bowl. Listen, Josh Allen is just on a different level right now. And that Bills team is a complete team. There is not many weaknesses in that roster as well. They still don't have Tre'Davious White. He's going to be back soon. The Bills they're a favorite for a reason, and they should be. They look unstoppable right now. And they've got a 5-game stretch coming up, a really tough 5-game stretch where they got to play, I think it's the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Steelers, and then 2 other really good teams. But if they get through that 5-game stretch, Packers is another one. If they get through that 5-game stretch, and I'm not saying they will, but if they get through that stretch undefeated, you look at the rest of that schedule, that's a team that unless they decide to rest people in the final week, they legit could go undefeated. Like, that team is very, very good. I think they're the best team in the league. I don't know if anybody's beating them other than, health, maybe. But I just can't bet against Josh Allen and with a team like that around him. I can't do it. Jamal Parker says, Jesse, my guy, love your shows and Niner content. From what you've seen or saw from training camps, do you think JV will come back close to 100%? I think he probably will. The injury was the biggest thing with JV is that he kept having setbacks after his other injuries. It was like he'd get injured, then he'd try to come back and he'd have a setback. This, from what I understand, has been very, very smooth, and they're taking it slow. There was a chance they were talking about that he could have came back for week 1, but they didn't do that. Sounds like he's going to be back around week 7. They're taking it really, really slow, and man, it could get really, really good in the secondary. It's already very good. It could be elite if you add Verrett to that. So absolutely, man. I think that he can come back and be 100% full go. I don't think it'll be a situation where when he was signed with the 49ers, if you remember, he did kind of already have a little setback. He didn't look good. They put him out there, wasn't looking good. They shut him down, brought him back again, and then he looked good. I think that this is a situation where he's just going to look good right away. I do. I definitely do. All right. Are we done with our kudos?
Yeah.
Did you say Armstead? Did you say Armstead? I want to give him kudos as well.
I did not. You could get Armstead.
I'll quickly give him kudos because a lot of the cleanup stuff that you're seeing from Hafunga is because of Armstead, right? And Hafunga's doing a great job shooting gaps, stopping people in the backfield, tackle for losses, whatever. But a lot of that is because Armstead is doing what he needs to do and just eating the offensive line up to give him that room to make those plays. So I know we want to see the sacks and he's paid a lot of money and all those other things, but trust me when I tell you, Armstead is playing very, very good football right now. He just is. He's playing really good football. So it's not going to show up in the stat sheet, but he's helping other players look really good. So, all right, let's get into some of this Trey Lance stuff. We can't not talk about it.
Right.
I'm not going to take the same angles as what we've been talking about. Whose fault is it? I think that's played out. I have my opinion on the channel as is. You can go check that out. But just overall, I think that there's a narrative from a lot of people that this is the end of Trey Lance. And when I say the end of Trey Lance, I don't mean in the NFL, right? Because I I think that would be asinine for anybody to think that. But as far as the 49ers project, it's over. Like the Trey Lance project is done, and we're not going to see him be the starter for the 49ers ever again. What are your thoughts on that? Do you believe that?
Well, there was an article that just came out. I don't know how true it is, but I'm sure you saw it, that he could be ready. There's a surgeon that believes he could be ready in 10 to 12 weeks, which would put it right at the end of the season, in time for the playoffs and things of that nature. If that article is true, I think it does change a little bit of the perspective that maybe people have. Not necessarily that he's going to get on the field this year, but at least he'll be able to be in practice, develop, and things like that. So one of the biggest, I guess, things that I know was a big point you were making, and it was easy to see for anybody that was logical, is that Trey got put into a really great situation, which was going to cause him to have a lot of success, right? He's not going to a team that was devoid of talent, much like Fields is in Chicago and so on. He got put into a Super Bowl caliber roster, so it makes it easier for a guy like that to be able to develop and play. Now, that same aspect is a negative for him in this situation, because you can't keep waiting on a guy to be ready when you have a Super Bowl caliber roster, because at the end of the day, those windows close very, very quickly. So when I think that's more what I'm thinking about as far as whether or not Trey's going to still have a chance with the 49ers, it's really about what the other options are, because if there's another option for them that could be ready to play right now, the problem with Trey is he needed development. He needed reps. And it's another year where he's not going to get the reps that he needs. So how many years can you keep pushing it down the line? I know your timeline was next year was going to be the year that the 49ers were really going to be able to show what they're capable of. Well, now by that same logic, it would be a year like 2024 now, right? So can you wait 2 years to be able to do that? And I think if you're Kyle Shanahan, if you're Lynch, if you're Jed York, I don't know if you can, because at the end of the day, like it's performance. It's that over feelings. And I want Trey to be the guy. But at the end of the day, if Jimmy takes these guys again to another Super Bowl or close, or there's another quarterback out there that's readily available, like a Matt Stafford was for the Rams, the previous year, they might have to look at that option, just because you can't keep waiting. You know what I mean? At this point, this is, a season-ending injury. Obviously, it was a fluke injury, so you can't necessarily put him as injury-prone, but he was injured last year with his thumb. Now it's the ankle. So the same type of things that you're saying about Jimmy, as far as why they moved off of Jimmy and got a guy like Trey, now Trey's building up that same type of resume, unfortunately without the results, though, because we haven't seen him play on the field enough.
Index finger for Jimmy, or for Trey,
right?
Or pinky, or whatever it was. Anyways, listen, I don't think it is, but I think it could be, right? Like, I think it's kind of an incomplete, and this season and how it goes is going to kind of dictate that, on top of what Jimmy wants to do. We have to remember that Jimmy Garoppolo is a free agent after this year, right? So let's say that Jimmy just balls out, they win a Super Bowl. Like, I think that's the scenario where it's like, okay, like, you win a Super Bowl with Jimmy, you probably aren't moving on. You might be willing to like open it up to a competition. Kyle's always open to competitions. He just is. So I think that would be realistic. But the chances of them allowing Trey, even if he looks better in training camp, to play over Jimmy would be slim to none. And so I think in that case, it could be over for Trey. But even if that happens, Jimmy has to want to come back. And Jimmy also is going to want the bag, right? And you've got guys like Bosa that you've got to pay. You've got a lot of big contracts that do kick in next year. I'm sure they could maneuver some things, kick the can down the road on some things, and possibly make it work. But at what cost, right? Like, if Jimmy does win the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl and he's a big reason why, then what are you looking at? 30 million, 40 million a year? Like, where do you draw the line? So where does Kyle say, okay, it's no longer worth it? Or where does Jimmy say, hey, listen, we had a great run. You got the kid. I appreciate everything, but you tried to get rid of me. I'm out anyways. Like, I got this team that's willing to pay me X amount of dollars. I'm a free agent. Remember, you can't franchise tag me. That's in my contract. I'm out anyway. So I think if I'm putting a percentage on it, I'm saying it's probably a 95% chance this is not the end of Trey in a 49er uniform as the starter. But there is certainly that chance, right? And I'm not completely writing it off and saying it can't happen. I think that there is a possibility that this could be the end of Lance, which would be extremely unfortunate, because we just never really got to see it take off. If they do decide to move on from Lance, in those scenarios I laid out, which would be perfectly acceptable, I would hope that they would trade him, right, and give him a chance to get his career and figure things out, because he is only. It's crazy, right? Because Joe Burrow came into the league at 25. Trey Lance is going to run through his whole rookie contract before he reaches that point. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not over for Trey Lance in the NFL. And if he gets a team that wants to develop him and give that to him properly and is not maybe in the same situation for the 49ers, he might ball out. And it might be something that the 49ers end up regretting in 5 or 6 years, right? Like, that's a possibility too. So I would say I'm going to bet that it's not, that he is the starter next year, but I certainly could see a scenario where it's like, yeah, it's over. Project's over. We're keeping Jimmy. Jimmy decides he wants to stay. We just want to ring with him. We're going to give him what he wants. And I mean, if we win a Super Bowl, listen, I love Trey. Like, I'm the biggest Trey guy in the community probably. But if we win a Super Bowl, and I said this last year, if we won a Super Bowl, I said, I don't care if you give Jimmy a lifetime contract and put a freaking statue out in front of Levi. I don't care. I want ring number 6. Ring number 6 trumps any other thought that I have. Do what you want at that point. And I'm rocking with it because I want that 6th ring. So if Jimmy delivers it and this team delivers it, I mean, if that's what it is, that's what it is. So I'd hate to see it. I'm rooting for Trey no matter where he goes, but I mean, I just got to be honest, man. Like, I want ring number 6.
I think Trey finishes out his rookie contract at least here with the 49ers. I don't think they're trading him or anything like that. I think it's actually more likely, if Jimmy does win a Super Bowl here with the 49ers, that Trey is the starter next year. Because at that point, the pressure's off of Shanahan. They've already brought their ring. Now they could start the developmental process again, much like they did, much like the Eagles just did, right? So the Eagles won a Super Bowl. It was Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. They actually got rid of Nick Foles that next year. And then Carson Wentz got rid of 2 years after that. They got rid of the coach, all that kind of stuff. And now, they're looking like a team that's competing again for another. They're looking really, really good. So if you have a guy like Trey, it might be like a blessing in disguise type of thing where it's still not that pressure because you have Jimmy type of thing. If Jimmy goes and they win a Super Bowl with this team, it might buy Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch the grace to be able to start Trey, and either it is business as usual, like we think Trey can, take a team or at least still be very competitive, and then you have, the guy that could take you there for the next decade. So I don't think he leaves the team, but I don't know if he's the starter next year guaranteed per se.
Yeah, I'll say this. I got a couple of people that are worried about me in the chat. Listen, let me be clear. I just said that Buffalo Bills, to me, are by far the best team in the league. I don't think the 49ers, and this, again, with Trey, Jimmy, whatever, if I'm a betting man and the 49ers have to go up against Buffalo in the Super Bowl, assuming they get there, I don't like that matchup at all. Because Josh Allen, regardless of our defense, he cannot be stopped. Can't be stopped. And if we're in a situation where a young Trey Lance or a Jimmy Garoppolo has to outduel a Josh Allen, it's just not happening. Not. And I think that's most likely what would happen. And again, you got to make the Super Bowl. There's no guarantee Jimmy stays healthy. He's not, exactly picture perfect health. There's a lot of things that have to happen. I give it a 5% chance. Certainly, I want ring number 6, and whatever they decide after ring number 6, I'll fall in line with, because that's most important to me. But I do not, if I'm a betting man, this is not the end of Trey Lance, and I can't wait for Trey Lance to ball out. And I'm still not, I don't care if it's with the 49ers. I don't care if it's whatever. I'm still betting on Trey Lance to be a very, very good quarterback in this league. And it would suck if it wasn't on San Francisco. But ring 6 trumps all. It just does, right? Like we as 49er fans, we have to be about ring 6. We do, right? So
if Brock Purdy brings us ring 6, he gets a statue.
Right. I don't listen. USMC, if you bring us ring 6, I'm with it. Trust me. I'm not off the Trey bandwagon. I'm not, it's not stopping here with me. Trust me. I promise you that. Speaking of, let's talk about expectations. Have they changed for you? And I'll start this one off. And I think maybe you'll realize that I haven't bumped my head. All right. My expectations for this team have changed a little bit. And for multiple reasons. But I said that I thought this team could go to a Super Bowl. Right. And I still believe that because the team is very, very good. Right. And my biggest thing with Trey Lance was I thought he could be a net zero quarterback. And I feel like he was against the Bears. Right. People want to say he lost it, whatever. I think he was a net zero quarterback in that game. I think he held up his end of the bargain. I just thought the team was so good around him that they could win while he was a net zero quarterback, much like they did in 2019 and 2021 with Jimmy Garoppolo. Right. It's what I've said about Jimmy, and people take such offense to this. It's not offensive. Most quarterbacks in the league are net negatives. Like that's the way the league is. There's not a lot of good quarterback play in the NFL. There's some very, very elite quarterback play, but once you get down to around 15 or later, it's not so great. You got some some net zero people that aren't going to win or lose you a lot of games. And then you have a lot of players that are going to outright lose you games on a regular basis. And I don't put Jimmy in that category. Now, can he lose you games and can he win you games? Yes. But for the most part, he's not going to be the reason you win or lose, right? And the 49ers have proven that they can win with that, right? It's a winning formula for them. They did it in 2019. They did it in 2021. And I felt like Trey Lance could do the same thing this year while he was growing and learning. My hope is that once he got to the playoffs, and not even so much the playoffs, but next year for sure, that he becomes a net positive quarterback. And now you're really cooking, right? That was my thought for them. And if that could happen, that they could make it to a Super Bowl, right? I'm going to say this. My expectations have changed, and not because this is not Jimmy's fault. This is not the team's fault, whatever. But there are a lot of people that told me this is a Super Bowl caliber team, and the 49ers are absolutely wasting it with Trey Lance, and that he should sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo and he's not ready and all these other things. Well, now you get to prove all those things that I was told. We get to find out now because Jimmy Garoppolo took this team over very, very early in the season. There are no excuses. If he's who you say he is, and I'm wrong about him, my expectation is they win a Super Bowl. And when I say definitely some people on Twitter and chats, whatever, but a lot of that is the national media. When I hear a guy like Colin Cowherd, who has the platform he has, and this is super unfortunate to me because I was a big Colin Cowherd guy. I'm from Portland, Oregon, right? Colin Cowherd used to be on local Fox News as the sports guy. Like I've been knowing Colin Cowherd way before he was anything big, way before the ESPNs when he was local radio. I really was a guy who rooted for Colin Cowherd, like Colin Cowherd. I like the way he thinks. He's made it personal with Trey Lance. The whole thing with Trey and his daughter, he's taken it to a different level. I think it's extremely unprofessional. I absolutely hate what he's doing. I hate that he has as big of a platform as he does to do what he does. But he is pushing this narrative that the 49ers, hours after injury to Trey Lance, this is a good thing. We should root for this because the 49ers are better because of it. Okay, word. If this is a Super Bowl caliber roster, if Trey wasn't ready, if Jimmy is who you guys say he is and not who I've said he is, then we should win a Super Bowl. So yeah, that's my expectation. And everybody who fed that to me, I'm holding every one of you accountable. All your feet to the fire for it if it doesn't go down the way that you told me it would. So let's see. Yeah, my expectations have changed.
So your expectations are that they'll go farther now.
Listen, for me, my personal expectations, I just said that the Bills are the best team in the league. I don't think that they would beat the Bills if they play that team, right?
Okay.
So if you're just asking me my honest expectations, no, they're the same as what they were. Maybe a slight step backwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because I was told by so many people that I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about, and that this team's ready to win now and we're wasting it all, and that if Jimmy was starting, we'd win a Super Bowl. I'm going off of what I was told. So
Okay.
if that's the expectation I should have if Jimmy was playing, then I'll have it. That's the
Petty Jesse.
expectation people are
I love
telling me
it
to
when
have. So
I
I'll
love
have
it
it.
when I love it when Petty Jesse comes out. Petty
I'm super.
Jesse.
I'm a petty. I'm like a Mario brother when it comes to pettiness. I'm about as petty as they come for
I
sure.
love it. I love it. So for me, my expectations are actually the same because I've always maintained the fact that the 49ers just need a starting caliber quarterback and they can compete for a Super Bowl because this team has so many high level elite players in so many positions of importance that all they needed was a starting caliber quarterback, right? And that's kind of my whole thing with Jimmy. I don't necessarily think he's the greatest quarterback. I definitely don't think he's the worst quarterback. But the reason why they have so much success with Jimmy is because he's a starting caliber quarterback. I thought the same for he also ranked them based off of whether or not they wear their hat. If they wear their hat backwards.
Andrew, I've seen this. I've definitely seen this.
He does it on their face. He does it on their and he does it on how they wear their hat. So if they wear their hat backwards, he's out on them. So Howard has some quirks when it comes to that. But
Acho's another one. Acho, you too. I'm coming for you, Acho, if it doesn't happen. One play Trey. That was you came up with that.
So I still think this team is competitive. I still think this defense is going to get better. I think that this offense is going to get better, and not necessarily because Jimmy's there. Like I said, it's just put in place starting caliber quarterback, and this is going to happen because the offensive line's continuity is only going to get better week after week after week. Brandon Ayuk is only going to get better week after week after week. We already know what Debo's capable of. Ray McLeod is going to get more comfortable. Danny Gray is going to get better and better. Kittle's coming back, right? We already talked about the studs on the defense that are coming back. So this team is set up to get better. They have a style of play that is proven to be capable of making deep playoff runs. So for me, the expectations are the same. And that isn't necessarily, like I said, I don't want it to be construed that I'm saying Jimmy is better than Trey. It's not because Jimmy is better than Trey. It's the same because I felt like Trey was a starting caliber quarterback, and I feel like Jimmy is starting caliber quarterback. So for me, any starting caliber quarterback put in this team with Shanahan and this whole infrastructure, I think is capable of being very, very competitive. So I do think, I think this team is better than last year's team. And they were, a couple plays away from making to a Super Bowl last year. I think this defense is better. I think that the playmakers are better because Brandon Ayuk is better. We're getting Kittle back. I still think this team is competitive. And, I think the Bills right now on paper are playing much better than the 49ers. But I do think that the type of defense this team has, because of the cornerbacks and the safeties, Jesse, are a tough matchup for the Bills as well because Diggs, any of their corners can be match up with Diggs. You know what I mean? Whereas in other places they don't have as many good cover corners, man-to-man corners. They don't have mixed with the type of pass rush this team has, mixed with the type of linebackers this team has. So it's gonna be just straight passing. They're gonna make because Buffalo has a weak running game. They're gonna make Josh Allen one-dimensional as far as throwing, and that's the strength of the 49ers defense. So I think it would be a competitive matchup because these defensive ends can just pass rush all game. And isn't that what you would want our defensive ends to be able to do? So that's where I think it could be competitive. I would still give the edge to the Bills, but I think it's going to be a tough night out for Buffalo. It's not going to be an easy night out for them.
Yeah, definitely. And you've got some players on this roster that have made a Super Bowl, right? Like that's going to be helpful. Jimmy would be one of them, right? And so
And
you would
Mooney
hope
Ward's
that
played
they
against them. Mooney Ward beat them. Was
no, no,
there
no,
with beat them
no, for
last year.
sure, for sure.
Hmm.
Although they didn't exactly slow him down. I'll say that. They just got
Well,
outdueled
if you don't, well,
possibly.
if you remember that game, that amazing game, right? Mooney Ward was injured most of that game. He came back when Kansas City ended up winning that game. So like he was a very pivotal player because he got injured some point in that game, and then he came back at the end of it when they were able to actually get the victory. So for me, I just I'm all positive, bro. I'm
No, I
all for
mean,
some of
listen,
that stuff.
this team is very good, right? Like there's a reason why I said that they're my favorites in the NFC, and that was with Trey, and I'm not changing it because Jimmy's starting. Like I've said it, and I see the comment, and I don't know if he's talking about people in the chat or if he's talking about me. But like I've said it, like the bottom line is this team is very, very good. And if I thought that Trey was a net zero quarterback at this stage in his career and they could go to the Super Bowl with him, and I'm calling Jimmy a net zero quarterback, then that means that they can go to the Super Bowl with him as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? They absolutely can. And there's only I'm going to say 2.5 teams that strike fear in me, right? One of them is the Eagles. And this was prior to the season, right? Obviously, it's easy to say now watching them just last night, but prior to the season, I felt like the Eagles really could give the 49ers a lot of matchup problems because defensively, I think they can contain the run quite a bit. They got two really, really good defensive tackles. They've drafted some good linebackers that I think can kind of roam around and play free. And so I felt like matchup wise, they would be a tough matchup, but I certainly think the 49ers can beat them. And then the half is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because it's Tom Brady. Like,
Right.
it's tough to beat Tom Brady, especially in the playoffs. But I think the 49ers have an overall better team, and I think they could beat Tom Brady and the Buccaneers. Though the other full team is certainly the Buffalo Bills. If they play the Chiefs actually don't worry me that much. I just don't think they're as complete of a team. I think they can beat the Chiefs. What are some other really good teams in the AFC? It's kind of weird because the AFC is like going into it, everybody's like, oh, this team, this team, they're so stacked. And it's like, oh, maybe Denver's not as good as
Well,
what
I
we
think
thought. Maybe the Raiders.
I mean, the Chargers are still there.
Chargers for sure. Yeah.
And I think Miami and Baltimore are still there. I think Miami's good, man.
Yeah, I think they can beat all those teams. The one team that I'm just like, listen, if they reach a Super Bowl and you come on this show for a prediction in the Super Bowl and they're playing this team, I'm not going to pick them to beat Buffalo. I'm just not. And I'm telling you now because I just think Buffalo's that damn good. And injuries are, maybe I'll change my mind or maybe I'll just be super fan mode and I'll pick them anyways. But right now, if you ask me, can they beat the Eagles? Sure. I think that's a coin toss. Can they beat the Buccaneers? I actually give them a 60-40 chance against the Bucs. I think they can beat the Bucs. Can they beat the Chiefs? I'm giving them a 60-40 chance there. And I'm probably doing that against the rest of the AFC. But if it's Buffalo, I'm saying 80-20 Buffalo. That's the one team that I'm just like, I want no part of Buffalo. And maybe Buffalo gets beat. They have trouble with Kansas City, right? I'm good with that, right? If they lose and they don't have to play Buffalo, then it's like, oh shoot, now I'm feeling good about the Super Bowl matchup, but Buffalo is just the one team. So
I think the only pushback is Buffalo is probably already playing at its peak in the sense like there's not really room for Buffalo to get better. Whereas the 49ers have so many young players on their team and they're, moving in like the offensive line, like I said, is a brand new concoction. The running game's a brand new concoction, right? Elijah Mitchell's coming back later in the season, all this kind of stuff. 49ers still have a lot of room for improvement. So if they continue to win even at this level, which I think they can just with the talent there, they have Jimmy Ward coming back, Justin Verrett coming back, Elijah Mitchell coming back, Kittle coming back. There's just so much talent coming back that we don't know what they're going to look like come that time. So there's still a very good chance, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. So Bang Bang says fake fans, and then he says I'm pressed. Listen, man, you can say what you want, but like I got a lot of signatures behind me, man. And I put in a lot of more hours than you can probably imagine on a channel that really doesn't help me pay my bills, right? So you can believe what you want, but what I do know is you don't like me, but I know you have to subscribe to talk to me. So I appreciate the subscription. Appreciate you. So anyways, all right, let's move on to how the 49ers must win, right? So we're talking about all these expectations. We're talking about, can they win a Super Bowl? All these Super Bowl matchups. What must happen for the 49ers to win? And I'm not talking about against the Broncos, but to be effective and win this season. If you could boil it down to one thing, what would you boil it down to?
This team has to be a top 8 rushing offense. That running game has to be top 8. And the reason for that is that's the only way to open up Jimmy's pass game. Because if it's not play action, it's going to be too difficult for Jimmy to really just air it out based off of not having a stacked box. You know what I mean? So he needs, if they're not afraid, if defenses aren't afraid of the 49ers run, it's going to be too difficult for Jimmy to be able to really move the ball down the field. So whether it's Jeff Wilson Jr., whether it's Jordan Mason, whether it's, Marlon Mack now, those guys have to be effective and consistently. Like, we have to have, an average of 4.5 yards per carry from the rushing attack. So to me, that's the biggest pivotal point. Because it opens up so much more for this offense.
Absolutely. Andrew, this is actually a low-key really funny comment because he's a 49er fan. He said, I subscribe for the Lions content. Hey, I got to admit, dude, those guys on the Lions side, they do a great job. So definitely you will not be disappointed with the Lions content. I promise you that. I'm going to cheat here, just like you cheated earlier about how they win this season. Yeah, I know. No surprise, right? Like, I get to give it back. So, okay, first of all, I think the way they win is this defense is absolutely elite. And when I say elite, I don't mean elite like they were against the Bears, which it was a very good defense. They were doing their job. They held them to minimal points. Things got squirrely at the end with penalties, but overall the defense did a really good job. But I said to win in week 2, they had to be dominant, because when I looked at this defense coming into the preseason, I really thought it could be a dominant defense. One of the best defenses they've had maybe ever. I really think that much of this defense. And so for me, I wanted them to assert their dominance. I wanted sacks. I wanted turnovers. We got all of that last week. Right. That's what I want to see from this team going forward. If this defense can assert their dominance and just force people into submission, there's not a lot of games that they're going to lose, regardless of who they're playing. So I think that's number 1. Number 2, and I want to throw some credit over here, Jimmy Garoppolo. He has to stay healthy. Has to. There are no other options, right? Purdy, yes, is an option, but Purdy's not really an option, okay? Mm-hmm. Jimmy has to stay healthy. And there has been some, ups and downs in his career with that. But I believe that if this defense does what it's supposed to do and stays dominant and Jimmy Garoppolo stays healthy, I think they can win a lot of games this year, for sure. So that's why I said I'm cheating, because I'm giving you that.
It's okay. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't get hurt in a contract year.
Oh, all right. That's fair. That's totally fair. The Goose says there better be a 30 for 30 if the Niners win the Super Bowl. I'll tell you what. A 30 for 30 that I want to see is the Jailblazers. I'm a Portland Trailblazer fan, so I want to see the Jailblazers. And I want to see a 30 for I want to see a 30 for 30 on this one as well. On this season. Just everything that's gone into it. I think it's so much drama and so many things that we just don't know, that eventually if we got to hear how it really went down, I think it would make for great theater. So 100% would believe it. The Goose said, okay, yeah, that one. And then Tommy says, Jesse, I have to eat my words for calling JWJ poo-poo. Who's JWJ? I don't know. I don't know who. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sure I should know that, but I don't. And I know you only have limited characters. You only have limited characters over there, so it's tough to get that one out. I'm sorry, dude. Anyways, all right. So let's get into this week's game, right? 49ers have the Broncos. This one's interesting because we talked about the AFC and how stacked it looked with the Raiders, who started out 0-2. The Broncos, for all intents and purposes, dominated the Seahawks game, but they lost because they did a lot of the things that the 49ers did, quite frankly, against the Bears. Penalties, turnovers, those types of things. They did not look good this past week. I mean, they had to eke out another win against a team that they should have easily beat. I don't know if the Broncos are as good as we kind of gave them credit for going into the season. And there's always a team that surprises you and is a lot better than what you thought. And then there's always a team that surprises you and is a lot worse than what you thought, right? So, with that being said, Broncos, do the 49ers get it done this week? How do they get it done? What's your score prediction?
So first off, JWJ, the chat has jumped in, is Jeff Wilson Jr. So that's who JWJ is. So he actually had a really good game, right? 4.7 yards per carry.
Jeff Wilson Jr. Okay, yeah. Hey, absolutely. And I tried to tell you guys, like, he looks explosive to me. I thought Jeff Wilson looked explosive. So yes, I should have known JWJ. That's my bad. But yeah, he looked explosive to me going into that game. I just think that the run game kind of got nixed a little bit, but I thought he had his explosion back in the preseason and stuff like that. So I'm actually very happy for him because it wasn't just you, Tommy. It was a big portion of this fan base that just said that he wasn't good and he shouldn't be a starter. So I'm actually happy for him.
Yeah. So I do think the Broncos have come out sputtering. There's a possibility that Judy isn't playing this game because he was injured in the last game. So that's another weapon down. They already lost Patrick for the year. If Judy isn't down, that's another weapon that that Russ doesn't have. So I do think that this is a winnable game for the 49ers. And I just feel like now they have like a rallying cry, right? Do it for Trey kind of thing. So I think they're going to come in with a lot of momentum. I think they've heard a lot of the talk, especially what happened with Chicago in the Chicago game. So I think they have a chip on their shoulder. And this is the first game that they could really kind of show who they are and kind of set the world, NFL world on fire that, we are legit. It wasn't just the Seahawks type of situation. How they do it, though, the biggest weakness on the defense is the quarterback breaking containment, right? We saw it with Justin Fields. We even saw it a little bit with Geno when they had some plays that were good. It's when he was able to break containment. And Russ has been able to do that to the 49ers as a Seahawk time after time after time, right? So as long as they can maintain Russ and keep him in the pocket, I think this is actually a fairly easy win for the 49ers. Now, obviously, that's a big if because that is their Achilles heel. But I do think that this is a victory for the 49ers. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I would say something around 24-17 would probably be what the score is, but I do see the 49ers with the victory.
I like it. It's funny because the universe has a funny way of making things line up for you, right? And the 49ers were able to get over that bugaboo in Seattle last week, and they did it in a dominant fashion. I loved every second of it, other than the injury, of course. Mm-hmm. I loved every second of it. And now they get to prove that it wasn't a fluke, and they can do it to Russell Wilson as well, right? Mm-hmm. And you get to do it in back-to-back weeks, which I absolutely love. So a lot of people in the chat are saying that they feel like, Russell's washed. Maybe that might be the case. I'll say this. There were certainly signs, not only last year, but the year before, that Russ was regressing. And, one of the things that I talked about coming into this season is for Russell Wilson, can he have that resurgence? And the resurgence that I'm talking about is one that Aaron Rodgers had. Aaron Rodgers had a down year or two. He was having some injuries. It looked like, things might be kind of going downhill for Aaron Rodgers. And it was around this age. And then all of a sudden, boom, he figured it out. But a lot of figuring that out was getting the new coaching staff in. He got the fire lit under him of them drafting a quarterback that he wasn't happy about. And there were some things that happened, and they had a really good team around him. I don't know if I'm ready to say Russ is washed, but so far it doesn't look like he's pulling out of that slump, right? Now, the numbers I think look pretty good against Seattle, but if you watch the game, he still does some things where it's like, man, gosh, for as good as you are, sometimes your decision making is a little questionable, right? You still run straight backwards to try to get out of sacks. Just some things that you wish he would clean up, and it's just the way that he plays. I think he can still give the 49ers fits, but I do think the 49ers win this game. I do, which is crazy because going into the season, you always have those games where you circle it and you're like, this is just a loss, right? Whether it's due to scheduling or travel or whatever. And I thought going in that they would win week 1, win week 2, beat the Rams, beat the Panthers and Falcons, and even beat the Chiefs, right? And start off on fire. But the one loss that I did have was against the Denver Broncos. I'm changing that right here, right now. Going with the 49ers to win. I do think it's going to be close. 27, 23 Niners, but I do think they get the job done. I think our defense is just different right now. I do. And I do think Judy's going to play. He's day-to-day. I do think Patrick Surtain's going to play. He's day-to-day also. I just don't think it matters. I think the 49ers get this one done. I really do.
And it's kind of wild because one of the reasons why I think a lot of people had faith for Denver because Russ was coming because they had such a good receiving core there with Judy, Sutton, and Tim Patrick. And now with Patrick out for the season, Judy, we don't know if he's playing or not. You feel he is. I don't know if he is. But I don't think that his receiving core is more dangerous than the one he had in Seattle. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of interesting is like we're actually going to play Russ with maybe less threats than he would if he was in Seattle. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be a victory. And yeah, I think that the defense, as long as they keep him contained in the pocket, it should be a fairly easy victory as well.
I didn't see the super chat. Did I miss a super chat from you, 49ers Daddy? It wasn't intentional. I genuinely didn't see it. Let me see if I can try to track it down. I do see this one here. Dustin says, if Trey recovers within 10 to 12 weeks, do you think that they would switch back or stay with Jimmy? I feel like I already know the answer to this one. Laughing my ass off. I don't know. I think there's a lot that depends on it, man. I don't think it's as easy as like, hey, you just do it. I could see a scenario where they would switch back, but I could see many scenarios where they don't. I think it comes down to how comfortable are they with the prognosis that Trey's fully healthy. I think that's priority number one. And then the second part is, how does the team look? And not only how does the team look, but how does Jimmy look, right? So I could see a scenario where possibly, if he's available week 17, they switch to him. Maybe Jimmy doesn't look great. The team's still winning and they want something different. But I think priority number one is Trey's fully healthy and there's no question marks there. And then I think Jimmy would have to be playing mediocre or bad football. And if he's playing good football, we already know what this team thinks of him. I think that's a hard switch to make, but it's not an impossible one by any means. Dude, 49ers Daddy, I am so sorry, dude. I legit don't see. Okay, I found it. Hold on. There it is. Sorry. Jesse, how has the 15-player leadership team handled this situation so far? Leaking the news about how they feel the day of Lance's surgery. This one's tough for me because if it's true, it's a disaster. Absolute disaster.
Can you explain it? I don't know.
It's the report that oh God, I forget his name. Everybody hates him. Mike Silver came out and said that he talked to people in the locker room after the injury, and that they said, off the record, don't say my name or don't put my name to this, but you can tell people that we're happy to have basically Jimmy starting again. I don't know how true it is. That's the hard part, right? First of all, if it's made up, then Silver, dude, disgusting work on your part, right? But if it's not made up and this also happened, then disgusting work on those players' part as well. And disgusting work on Shanahan's part for not having the foresight to think that this was a possibility when a lot of us thought that it was. So I'm not really set in stone on my thought on it because I don't know what's true and what's not, right? So this one's tough for me. I don't know. I don't know where to be because I don't know for sure what the answers are. So
Yeah, I didn't know about this, but I think there's a brotherhood in the NFL when it comes to injuries and things like that. It just doesn't seem like something any NFL player would put out, because there's no way in my mind that Trey Lance is that toxic where players are coming out and kind of doing this on or off the record.
right, and that's the hard part for me is like we don't truly know any of these players, right? They could be total jerks. And like I said, I fully expect that there are some people. This is these are humans playing a game. I fully expect that some people aren't happy that Trey's hurt, right? But like a lot of the people in the chat, right? You're not happy that Trey's hurt, but you're happy that Jimmy's playing because that's the result that you wanted anyways. So I've got to imagine that some people certainly do feel that way. But that's very different than being like celebrating an injury hours after it happens. That's a whole different thing. And that's unless I'm there to see it for sure, I don't want to pin on anybody because that's an awful thing to say. So it's nasty work on somebody's part.
And they're saying there's 15 players that came out and said this.
No. What he's saying, I think he's kind of conflating two things, right? Shanahan before the season says he has a group of 15 players that are kind of like his leadership council that he consults on things. He consulted them on the whole Jimmy thing. And then there are players that came out, according to Silver, and said what they said, that they're basically happy that they've moved on and Jimmy's a starter and yada, yada, yada. So he's saying, hey, if that's the case, what do you think of this leadership council now? Which, again, It would be nasty work, but I don't want to pin that on any players because I don't know for sure, right? But it's nasty work on somebody. It's either Silver or the players. I just don't know where to pin it. So it's hard for me to say otherwise. Tobin says Russell is out of shape and he can't run an offense, but we know he can beat the Niners. If we're up, then maintain aggression. Looking at you, Kyle. Yeah, man, there's certainly some truth to that. He definitely knows how to beat the 49ers. But to be fair, so did Carroll, and we saw how that played out. So I think the 49ers can get it done. I really do. I think they can beat the big bad wolf, and thank God we don't ever have to see him again, at least for another 4 years or so, hopefully. And they can get over this hump 2 weeks in a row. So for me, I think they get it done. Suneil, it sounds like you think they get it done. Two things real quick. Suneil, I hate you because you forgot to remind me. So I don't have the link readily available. But the link is in the description. Go subscribe to Suneil's channel, please. The link is in the description. Very easy click. Just hit subscribe. Show him some love. And then a lot of you have been coming through and watching the games with us on Sunday. And it's been a blast. We had a lot of fun. Even throughout the injury last week, we were able to kind of talk through it together. It was great to have a lot of people there to really go through the whole thing. I appreciate everybody that's been tapping in there. The link should be pinned to the chat. So if you go to the top of the chat, you can click that link. That'll get you signed up. It's free, by the way. Get you signed up to watch the games right there live on screen. And then you'll see me on screen along with my guy, David, and then everybody in the chat. It's a lot like this, but with the game playing behind us. So definitely tap in and do that. Appreciate all of you for showing love. Even the haters, I appreciate you for showing love in a roundabout way. Much love. I'll be back tomorrow with Grant. And then we're going behind enemy lines because I have a Broncos guy coming on right here, Last Second Sports, and we're going to talk through the matchup from their side of things as well. So we get to learn about the Broncos. So make sure you tap into that. Appreciate y'all. Stay blessed. Have a great night. Peace.